What if everything you've been told about mental health diagnosis is completely wrong? What if Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who revolutionized psychology and wrote the book that's helped over 10 million people find meaning in life, discovered a shocking truth about misdiagnosis that could change your life forever? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal 3 discoveries that Frankl made from surviving 4 concentration camps: Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Kaufering, and Turkheim, and treating thousands of patients in his post-war psychiatric practice. Discoveries that challenge everything modern psychology teaches about mental health diagnosis. But first, I need you to do something. Comment below with "mind blown" if you've ever felt like your mental health diagnosis didn't quite fit. Because what you're about to learn will shake you to your core. Here are the 3 Frankl discoveries that will blow your mind. First, why most therapists are looking in the completely wrong direction. Second, the one question Frankl asked that exposed the real problem behind 90% of mental health struggles. And third, the technique he developed that's been hidden from mainstream psychology for decades. If you've ever wondered why so many people feel worse after therapy, this video will change everything you thought you knew about mental health. Look, Viktor Frankl wasn't just another psychologist. This man survived the absolute worst of human experience and came out with insights that transformed millions of lives. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, has sold over 10 million copies worldwide and has been translated into more than 24 languages. Harvard invited him to lecture. The world's leading institutions recognized his genius. But here's what most people don't know about Frankl's story. When he arrived at Theresienstadt concentration camp in 1942, he was already an established psychiatrist with revolutionary ideas about human psychology. But what he witnessed and experienced over the next 3 years in 4 different camps would completely transform his understanding of the human mind. And here's where it gets interesting. Frankl noticed something that would later become the foundation for his entire therapeutic approach. He observed that among prisoners facing identical horrific conditions, some completely broke down mentally, while others maintained their psychological strength. The difference wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't physical strength. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't even previous mental health history. But wait, because what I'm about to show you will blow your mind. In 3 minutes, I'll show you the study that shocked even modern psychologists about what Frankl discovered was the real predictor of mental breakdown versus psychological resilience. First, let me tell you about Maria, one of Frankl's post-war patients. She came to his clinic in Vienna after being diagnosed with severe depression by 3 different psychiatrists. She'd been on medication for 2 years with no improvement. Traditional therapy had failed completely. Within 6 weeks of working, with Frankl using his revolutionary approach, Maria was completely transformed. But here's the shocking part. Frankl never once focused on her depression symptoms. Hold on, because what I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you think you know about mental health treatment. The technique I'm about to reveal in minute 7 has transformed millions of lives, but most therapists today have never heard of it. See, Frankl realized something profound in those concentration camps. He watched prisoners who had everything stripped away, their families, their possessions, their dignity, their freedom. Yet some maintained what he called their inner freedom. Others, who seemingly had the same circumstances, fell into complete despair. The difference, it wasn't their circumstances, it was something much deeper. Now listen, this is where modern psychology gets it completely wrong. Most therapists today focus on symptoms: depression, anxiety, trauma responses. They're looking at the surface-level problems. But Frankl discovered that these symptoms are often just manifestations of something much more fundamental, missing from a person's life. Here's the thing that will change how you see everything. Frankl called it an existential vacuum. And this is why 40 million Americans are being misdiagnosed every single year. Let me break this down step by step. Traditional psychology says you're depressed because of chemical imbalances or past trauma. So they give you medication or endless therapy sessions digging into your past. But Frankl's approach was revolutionary. He said, you're experiencing these symptoms because your life lacks meaning and purpose. Wait until you hear what happened. Next, This changes everything about how we should approach mental health. Because if Frankl was right, and the evidence suggests he absolutely was, then we're treating millions of people for the wrong thing entirely. Think about it. How many people do you know who have been in therapy for years with minimal improvement? How many are on multiple medications, but still struggling with the same issues? The American Psychological Association's own data shows that only about 40% of people in traditional therapy show significant improvement. That means 60% are stuck in a cycle of treatments that aren't addressing the root cause. But here's where it gets really interesting. Frankl developed a therapeutic approach called logotherapy, literally meaning therapy, and the results were absolutely extraordinary. In his clinical practice after the war, Frankl treated thousands of patients using this approach. His success rates were unlike anything psychiatry had seen before. Patients who had been labeled treatment-resistant were experiencing complete transformations. Let me tell you about Hans, another one of Frankl's documented cases. Hans was a successful businessman who'd been diagnosed with clinical depression and generalized anxiety disorder. He'd tried every medication available, seen multiple specialists, even underwent electroshock therapy. Nothing worked. When he came to Frankl, he was on the verge of suicide. Frankl spent the first session asking Hans one simple question that most therapists never ask. Within 3 months, Hans was completely off medication and described feeling more alive than he had in decades. What was that question? Before we get to the most important part, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your life was successful on paper, but somehow empty inside? Like you were going through the motions but missing something essential? If so, you're experiencing what Frankl identified as the core problem behind most mental health struggles in developed countries. Here's the question Frankl asked that changed everything. What is your life asking of you? Not, what do you want? From life, which is what most therapy focuses on. But what does life want from you? This completely flips the script on personal psychology. See, most people experiencing depression, anxiety, or what we call mental health issues aren't actually mentally ill. They're spiritually and existentially starving. They're living lives that don't align with their deeper purpose and meaning. They're treating symptoms of meaninglessness with medication designed for chemical imbalances. It's like trying to cure hunger with pain medication. You might temporarily feel better, but you're still starving. Now here's the study I promised you earlier that shocked even modern psychologists. Recent research has validated Frankl's observations from the concentration camps. A 2019 study, published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, followed 10,000 participants over 15 years. The results were stunning. People who scored high on meaning in life scales had 43% lower rates of depression, 51% lower rates of anxiety disorders, and were 67% less likely to attempt suicide, regardless of their circumstances, trauma history, or genetic predispositions. The researchers concluded that meaning and purpose were stronger predictors of mental health than any other factor they measured. But wait, it gets even more incredible. The same study found that people who found meaning in their suffering, exactly what Frankl observed in the concentration camps, showed remarkable psychological resilience even in the face of severe adversity. This knowledge is usually only available to people who've studied Frankl's complete works, all 39 of his published books. Most therapists today learned about him briefly in school, but never really understood the depth of his discoveries. Let me share with you the technique that transformed Hans and thousands of Frankl's other patients. Frankl called it de-reflection. It's the opposite of what most therapy does. Instead of focusing inward on your problems and symptoms, you focus outward on your purpose and contribution to the world. Here's exactly how this works in practice. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel depressed?" Frankl would guide patients to ask, "What meaningful action can I take today despite how I feel?" Instead of, "What's wrong with me?" the question becomes, "How can I serve something greater than myself?" The results were miraculous. Patients who had been stuck in therapy for years began experiencing breakthroughs within weeks. But here's the most powerful part. Frankl discovered that when people found their unique meaning and purpose, their symptoms often disappeared entirely without any other treatment. Depression lifted, anxiety dissolved, even trauma responses began healing naturally. This isn't positive thinking or motivation. This is based on what Frankl called the will to meaning, a fundamental human drive that's even stronger than the will to pleasure or the will to power. The next technique requires your full attention because it could literally save your life. Frankl developed what he called paradoxical intention. When someone was stuck in a cycle of anxiety or depression, he would actually encourage them to intentionally experience more of that feeling. I know this sounds crazy, but here's the psychology behind it. When you're afraid of anxiety, you create more anxiety. When you're depressed about being depressed, you deepen the depression. But when you intentionally try to feel more anxious or depressed, something remarkable happens. Your mind naturally rebels against it. One of Frankl's patients was a man who couldn't sleep because he was so anxious about not sleeping. Frankl told him to try to stay awake as long as possible each night. Within a week, the man was sleeping normally again. This technique has been validated by modern research and is now used in many forms of cognitive behavioral therapy, though most practitioners don't realize it originated with Frankl. Before I reveal the most important part, let me tell you about the tragedy that could have been prevented. In 2019, the CDC reported that suicide rates in America had increased by 35% since 1999. That's over 47,000 Americans taking their own lives every year. Most of them had been in traditional therapy or on psychiatric medication. Frankl believed that most suicidal ideation wasn't actually a desire to die. It was a desperate cry for meaning and purpose. His logotherapy techniques had remarkable success in preventing suicide, often in cases where traditional methods had failed. But here's what breaks my heart. Most mental health professionals today have never been trained in Frankl's methods, despite their proven effectiveness. The pharmaceutical industry makes billions treating symptoms, not addressing the root cause of meaninglessness. This information usually costs thousands in specialized seminars and advanced psychology training. But I believe it's too important to be locked away from people who need it most. Here's the system that transformed millions of lives. Frankl identified 3 sources of meaning that anyone can tap into. First, creative values, what you give to the world through your work, art, or contributions. Second, experiential values, what you take from the world through relationships, beauty, truth, and love. Third, and most importantly, attitudinal values, the stance you take toward unavoidable suffering. This third category is what Frankl called humanity's greatest achievement, the ability to find meaning even in the midst of suffering. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Comment, strength, if you've ever experienced a moment where you found strength you didn't know you had in the midst of difficulty. See, most people think happiness and meaning are the same thing, but Frankl discovered they're often opposites. The pursuit of happiness often leads to emptiness, while the pursuit of meaning often leads to genuine fulfillment. This is why so many successful people, celebrities, wealthy individuals, those who seemingly have it all, struggle with depression and anxiety. They've achieved happiness but missed meaning. Tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed that your happiest moments weren't when you were focused on being happy, but when you were focused on something meaningful beyond yourself? The experts don't want you to know this, but meaning can't be given to you by another person or found in a pill. It has to be discovered through your own choices and actions. But here's where most people get stuck. They think meaning has to be something grand or world-changing. Frankl discovered that meaning is often found in the smallest acts of love, service, or creative expression. One of his patients found profound meaning in caring for her elderly mother with dementia. Another discovered his purpose in teaching neighborhood kids to read. A third found meaning in writing letters to soldiers overseas. The size of the action doesn't matter. What matters is that it connects you to something beyond your own immediate needs and desires. Comment yes if this resonates with you. Now, here's the technique that could change your life starting today. Frankl called it meaning detection. Every evening before you go to bed, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I create or contribute today, even in a small way? What did I experience that was beautiful, true, or loving? What attitude did I choose in the face of difficulty or challenge? These questions train your mind to notice meaning that's already present in your life, while also guiding you toward more meaningful choices tomorrow. But wait, there's something even more powerful. Frankl discovered that meaning is often found not in avoiding suffering, but in finding purpose within it. Every person who's ever achieved something significant has transformed their pain into purpose. Share your story below about a time when your greatest struggle became your greatest strength. The most successful people understand something that others don't. That meaning and fulfillment come from serving something greater than yourself. This is investment-grade knowledge for serious achievers who understand that true wealth includes psychological and spiritual prosperity, not just financial success. Here's exactly what happens when you apply Frankl's principles consistently. Within the first week, you'll notice a shift in your energy and motivation. Instead of waking up feeling empty or anxious, you'll wake up with a sense of purpose. Within the first month, problems that used to consume your thoughts will seem smaller and more manageable. You'll develop what Frankl called tragic optimism, the ability to remain hopeful despite life's inevitable challenges. Within 3 months, people around you will notice a fundamental change in who you are. You'll have developed what Frankl called self-transcendence, the ability to point beyond yourself towards something meaningful. But here's the most incredible part. This transformation happens regardless of your current circumstances. Frankl proved this in the most extreme conditions imaginable. If it worked in concentration camps, it can work anywhere. The premium insights I've shared today are typically reserved for advanced psychology training and specialized therapy programs. But the truth is, every person deserves access to these life-changing principles. Most people get meaning completely wrong. They think it's something you find, like a treasure hunt. But Frankl discovered that meaning is something you create through your choices, actions, and attitudes. You don't find your purpose in life. You forge it through living purposefully. If you're serious about transformation, here's what you need to understand. The techniques I've shared aren't just psychological tools, they're pathways to what Frankl called authentic existence. They're the difference between merely surviving and truly living. Viktor Frankl survived the absolute worst of human experience and emerged with insights that have transformed millions of lives over 7 decades. His 39 published books continue to guide people toward meaning and fulfillment. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The question is, what will your life ask of you? And how will you answer that call? Comment below with transformed if you're ready to stop treating symptoms and start living with true meaning and purpose. Because at the end of the day, Frankl's greatest discovery wasn't about psychology or therapy. It was about the incredible capacity of human beings to find meaning, create purpose, and transform suffering into strength. That capacity lives within you right now. The only question is whether you'll choose to use it. Remember, everything can be taken from you except your freedom to choose your response to any situation. That freedom is your pathway to a meaningful life. Your life is asking something of you. Are you ready to answer?